diving straight into the video. So the biggest problem faced with a lot of athletes, whether you're training at the park or whether you're training at the gym, is usually the fear factor. And this is the fear factor of embarrassing yourself, of doing something that is far-fetched or from the normality, something that you don't really see a lot of people doing. This can often be the biggest part of someone not progressing, someone not building muscle, and someone not gaining strength. Some people may be embarrassed over this one big factor, especially for calisthenic athletes. I guess the biggest factor that can lead to embarrassment or a lack of confidence, and they're mostly afraid of doing this, is doing an exercise that it usually isn't seen around, I guess, the proximity of athletes or training in general. So for example, with calisthenics training, if we were to do Hindu push-ups, now generally Hindu push-ups look quite weird and they do look quite embarrassing, especially if you're doing it somewhere where we work out in public, out in the park and children's playground. So when we do Hindu push-ups, we are often embarrassed, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it just because we feel embarrassed about doing it. Sometimes doing the move or doing the exercise that you feel most embarrassed about can be the most beneficial thing that you can do in order to actually meet your training goals. Whether you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to build strength, or you lose fat or build a six-pack, whatever training goal it is, oftentimes if you're neglecting something that looks weird or doesn't fit the normality, something that might embarrass you, such as Hindu push-ups or even attempting a handstand, if you're afraid of failing in front of other people, whether you're at the gym or whether you're at the calisthenics park, it really doesn't matter, especially with the gym. Most beginners, and maybe even some advanced athletes as well, they're afraid of doing something just because they might feel people would think less of them. Okay, so another problem that surrounds athletes as well is the fear of doing stretches that feel weird, or the stretches that feel, I guess, that make you look like a sissy. For example, stretches that stretch your glutes, stretches that stretch your hamstrings. There's a lot of other stretches that put you in a position that makes you look like a wuss, or makes you look like a bit more feminine if you are a guy. In contrast to the females doing stretches or doing exercises that make you look more masculine while doing that exercise, or that may result in you looking more masculine. It's the same thing in that aspect as well. If you're afraid of doing those things, obviously stretching is a very important part of training, especially dynamic stretching. I don't know about static stretching before, but definitely dynamic stretching before you work out. That's a very important aspect. And if you're afraid of doing some ups and downs in the gym or at the park, then obviously you're not going to make the gains that you want to make. Okay, so the next common problem that I see a lot of athletes do is, especially for the gym, is that they don't leave their ego at the door. As soon as you walk into the gym, or as soon as you walk up into the hill to the park, especially for us, if you're going into that place wherever you're training and you don't leave your ego behind that door or entrance, then you're asking for a beating. And I'm talking about a mental beating, not a physical beating. So when I talk about leaving your ego at the door, this is more of trying to choose a weight or an exercise that you just can't do. For example, squats, if you're trying to rack 300, 200 kilos on that rack, on that squat rack, and you can't do it, if you can barely squat 150, obviously you're not going to squat 200. But people may do this. You know, some people, they go to the gym, they bring their ego with them just because they feel good on that day, and they rack as much as they can, even though their form is flawed, and they compromise form for just to complete that move. And obviously that's going to detriment your results in the future. It may lead to injuries, may lead to muscle imbalance, may lead to a lot of things. For example, with calisthenic athletes, there's a very similar factor with this as well. A lot of people want to achieve a lot of advanced moves, human flag, planche, front lever, triple clap. If you want to do all of those things, you're going to have to progress up to that point. But let's say you already have that move. If you already have a triple clap push-up, for example, if I can't do that exercise anymore, obviously you're going to drop set down. And if I can't do a Superman push-up anymore, if I can't do a ply push-up anymore, you're going to have to drop set down, even if you're going to have to compromise your manlyhood or manliness just to get that set in. Another detrimental factor for your gains can also be the fear factor of attempting an exercise that you never tried before. Now, for example, when Dylan was trying for his muscle up, or when he was trying for his human flag, he was very afraid of doing that just because he was afraid of looking weird or looking weak when performing that move. I know a lot of people who are trying to attempt a move that is very difficult. Now, when I try to attempt planches, if I would attempt it on the floor and I can't do that move, I'm obviously going to look very weak and look very weird when trying to do that move, when a lot of people don't even know what that move is. So human flags, if you see any kind of person try to jump on that pole and perform that move, you're going to think they're weak, and that person may feel embarrassed. And for example, with the gym side, when people try to do an exercise that doesn't fit the formality, let's say an exercise that you have learned from Athlete Next or Jeff Cavalier, say a cable crossover that targets your upper chest or a dumbbell crossover that targets your upper chest, you don't see a lot of people doing that move. And you may feel embarrassed or afraid of doing that move in front of other gym goers or gym junkies just because you think that they may approach you and criticize you for doing that. They may actually walk up to you and say, "Oh bro, you're doing that wrong. What are you trying to do? You know, what are you doing here?" That happens. So yeah, being afraid to try any new movement that you have never tried before, but is still beneficial, don't be afraid of doing it. Because as I said before, it may be really beneficial for you. If you're a male and you feel embarrassed of doing squats, whether you're doing squats at a park, especially here when we do squats, or you're doing a squat body weight at the gym, you may feel embarrassed of doing that. And most people may apprehend that move as a sissy exercise. Especially if you're using a light amount of weights, then people will think low of you. At least that's what you think. But I'm here to tell you the truth, that whatever you're doing, most advanced, most experienced athletes who already have what they desire, if they see beginners at the gym, they're going to think highly of you because you're committing yourself to actually go through that process of developing something, of developing yourself, of completing yourself and achieving something. A lot of people have high praise for that. And we all know if you're afraid of doing squats, male or female, if you have weak glutes like the cameraman here, Dylan, if you have weak glutes, which may often lead to low back pain, ankle pain, stiffness and bad posture. We know that for a fact. And that can also be a very detrimental factor for your gains as well. And another issue is when people are embarrassed or afraid of making an ugly face when they work out. Most of the females when we had here back a long time ago when they would train, well, obviously they didn't train to where they really wanted to make progress, but just the vast majority of women when they train, what I see, from my experience, I don't see them making an ugly face. And I know a lot of people, there is a big difference between training to look good and training to look good. So let me try to differentiate the two if you don't know. There is training to look good where you are training in that very process, not caring what other people think about you, and the end result is you looking good. And the other training to look good is when you're training, but you're looking good in that process. So you're afraid of looking bad, man and female. If you're working out and you're not making an ugly face, obviously you're not putting in enough work. Making an ugly face, you need to push yourself, and that's the biggest message that I have for you. If you're already even dealing with any of these issues, then you really have to reconsider why you're training in the first place. Whether you're an experienced athlete, an advanced athlete, I don't know how you would differentiate the two, but I've been training for 5 years plus. Majority of those issues and how to face it is to really ask yourself, why am I training? Who am I training for? And how am I going to train in order to actually get up to that point? With a lot of athletes out there, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, you're training for your own cause. In the end, you're training for yourself, you're not training for anyone else. So even if you're doing an exercise that doesn't fit the normality, in the end, you're training for yourself and you're trying to better yourself. You're trying not to improve what they think of you, but to improve what you think of yourself. So that's really what you need to think about, is why you're training in the first place. That's how you fix the issues at hand if you're dealing with any of these. Now, there are a lot of other issues and problems that I see faced with a lot of calisthenics athletes, a lot of athletes in general. Obviously, I don't want to list them all. So that basically concludes everything. As a takeaway message for you guys, ask yourself, why are you training? And in general, you guys should be training for yourself and not anyone else. I know a lot of other people, their motive for training is to impress people, is to look better for other people, but you need to really revamp that mindset and to change that, to train for yourself and to better yourself. I know before when I was training, I wanted to train just because I wanted to become stronger. I didn't train because I wanted to look better for other people. Even though a lot of people train to look better for other people, I know that people have the mindset of, oh, I'm not happy with how I look, then I'm going to train. That's a good mindset, but it shouldn't be, I'm not proud of what I look like, and I want other people to think better of me by training. That shouldn't be your mindset. And you should really think about these things, especially when you're training, whether you're a beginner to advanced athlete. So that'll be it for everything. I forgot how to actually conclude the video. It's been a while since we filmed the guys, so I forgot. Alright, so stay strong, never give up, make gains, Tai Chi firm until the end. So thick and thin, Tai Chi is always within. Make sure, keep these in mind, because if you want to make gains, then you have to really think about these. Alright, peace out.
Nah, I did it.